everyone. Thank you for joining me for my slide presentation. I'm very sorry I'm missing the class today. As you know, I'm Mika, and this is the portfolio that I'm presenting. It's kind of an abridged version, so it's not all of my work, but it's the most recent and the most relevant. In 2023, I started doing a body of work that I called Power Play, which focuses on symbols of war, symbols of power, and a lot of that uses kind of armor as well as weapons. So these are sea mines that I made in Saudi Arabia. And then on the right are acrylic fingernails that are linked together using chainmail, which is kind of like a armor technique and a fashion technique. And um, and these are symbolic of how we fetishize objects of war or even fashion items. And so I was discussing kind of and using objects and symbols to um, approach the topic of feminism and how gender and objectifying war and our fascination with violence is present in our everyday lives and also in art. So this body of work I did at a residency in Saudi Arabia, which I then sold the work to different female collectors, which in that sort of political environment was, yeah, it was also kind of part of the work and a really interesting way to elevate women who are working in the arts in a country that's in such a transformative stage, especially with regards to gender and individuals' rights. So that work, I also did a kind of like guerrilla poster campaign where I created this poster, the image in the middle, which copied the Venice Biennale imagery in 2022. And I went through the streets of Venice and postered over the existing imagery that was advertising the actual exhibit. So obviously I wasn't a featured artist at the Venice Biennale, but that was my way of kind of inviting myself and also bringing focus to the fact that it was the same week and month, I think, that Russia invaded Ukraine. And so a lot of the work in the Venice Biennale was not political and was not in any way commenting on the state of how close we are to a state of war and how it's almost like there's this pink elephant or a pink bomb floating in the Grand Canal. So that's why I used that image in the middle. And I think it was very successful. I had people asking like where they could see the work and if it was submerged or if it had been sunken in the canal already or if it was something that was floating. And so it was really interesting to see how people were responding to the posters. This is the work. I was the assistant for this artist, Mohamed Shono, who was the Saudi selection for the pavilion during the Venice Biennale that year. So I worked as his assistant. This is a piece called The Teaching Tree, which was a 50-foot long robotic tree made of Saudi palm leaves, which we hand painted and installed over the course of a month. And so a lot of what changed a lot of my work in this time was working for him, obviously, and learning from how to change something from a story, which he works a lot with myth, and how to transform that into something of scale that has really like poetic and impactful quality with oftentimes very simple material. So this is a 4-story building that we loomed and hand wove with string, and this was kind of retelling the myth, a Saudi myth about a young woman who her name Noor means light. So I worked for him for about a year. This was a piece that we did for the Art Basel in Switzerland, and again, this was kind of like, I guess, helpful in transforming my understanding of how I was previously using material as like a small object, and then finding a way to make something like this is palm leaf stems again, and this was in the Stadt Casino, And yeah, using scale and like really trying to understand how to change your experience of an object or a sculpture in a more immersive way. So this is a show I had in South Africa, um, which I call Softcore War. So it's kind of a progression from Power Play, which again, I'm like still investigating these objects that deal a lot with war, but I'm trying to abstract them. So this floating helium balloon um, is again like using those really kind of vibrant pinks and like I guess fetishized textures. So like a balloon or something that you'd use at a celebration or something that you'd see maybe on like a fancy car, and like yeah, transmuting that or using it in a way that's kind of sarcastic or satirical and saying this is a celebratory object, a balloon in a gallery, but it's supposed to represent something that's like on the verge of exploding. And um, the gallery owner at the time, he is Israeli, and he was explaining to me that this is how carpet bombs are essentially shaped, and this is the form of a an oil barrel. And yeah, I think it's just an interesting way that this object or this barrel-shaped pill, um, a pill-shaped barrel, is an object that kind of references so many things like medication or um, yeah, or something that transports fossil fuels. And then I also made these smaller ceramic pieces, which again, they're like incredibly fragile ceramic pink sea mines, and just like contrasting the delicate with something that is generally really violent and um, potentially explosive. And then the work on the right is called Replicant, which I used an existing um, antelope, which is called a kudu. It's a kind of animal that's found in South Africa, and I used a spine and then continued to iterate the vertebra as if the animal is evolving into something that's um, kind of cybernetic, but also partially plastic. So the idea there is that, you know, if an animal were to endure some kind of nuclear war, how would and could the animals adapt and mutate into something that would survive an extinction level event? And so it's kind of trying to understand how, you know, humans are dealing with this constant threat of nuclear or, you know, any kind of environmental disaster and still maintaining yeah, kind of cognitive dissonance and moving forward and painting things pink or seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. Um, this is a show I did last year in Berlin called Cruise Control, which, again, it's like I think I'm still trying to work through changing from small objects to things that are more immersive. And I really want to like push into things that are more less small sculpture based and more of a installation that people walk through or that people can have more of a sensorial experience. So these were made of hair extensions and zip ties and kind of like armature and found objects, which I coupled with um, double exposure photography on light boxes and plastic molds, which are the things hanging in the center of the sculpture. So they're like plastic reliefs that are molded from the human body. And then the object on the right is a steel welded sculpture, which is supposed to sort of symbolize an abstracted missile or some debris from an explosive device or something that's fallen to the earth or detonated or caused some kind of destruction. Um, and so this is, you know, trying to directly relate, again, like kind of the use of the acrylic fingernails, using hair extensions or something that's fake, but very much related to the human body, and trying to, yeah, use these materials and languages to describe and discuss and feel into how humanity has to respond to the kind of disruption and transformation of our world in political and environmental terms. Um, and this is the most recent project that I did in a residency in Tulum, Mexico, at my partner and I started working together, and we won what is called the Art and Nature Award, which was 1 month in Mexico, where we were asked to use um, AI, nature, and ancestral wisdom. So the prompt was to incorporate those three subjects and to come up with um, a sculptural proposal. And during that time, what we created was a meter cube of rammed earth, which is like a kind of traditional or indigenous building method where you use soils and compact them like in a concrete mold. So um, these are sands, soils, different earth pigments, termite nests, everything that we used in the sculpture was local to the environment or into the immediate surroundings, and was also something that the museum that we were working out of is also a major like destination holiday resort that's developing um, residential homes. And part of that is kind of, I think contested, and the conversation about building and gentrifying or, you know, colonizing a really rural and traditionally Mayan um, part of Mexico and its coastline is kind of a topical and environmental question. So this museum and hotel is I think, in a positive light, trying to integrate art and culture into their overall project, but at the same time they're also putting in swimming pools and bringing major tourism to an fairly untouched piece of jungle. So a lot of the debris and stuff that's listed as the materials in this piece are construction site remnants and the things that they are actually excavating in order to put in parking lots and hotel rooms. So then the center of this piece is a hyperbolic void, which is a single point, like mathematically a single point that recedes into space into infinity, which is obviously it's not infinite, but the concept here is that as you walk around the gallery, facial recognition and motion recognition senses where people are in the room, and it plays the audio of endangered birds and computer generated and AI generated sound that will kind of respond to people in the space. And the idea is that every time you're experiencing this piece, it is a different symphony. So it responds to where people are and how many people are in a space or how long they stay in a certain area of the room. So it will never be the same. So this is the kind of work that I'm really hoping to bridge, and I think the two styles are very different, but at the same time I'm trying to really embody these concepts of environment, displacement, future, inhabitants, and just discussing political and environmental concerns, but in a less literal way. So my hopeful progression here is to kind of unify a lot of those ideas and to come up with more poetic ways of exploring those concepts without creating these objects that kind of become stagnant. So I think in my earlier work where it's a hanging chainmail of pink fingernails, it doesn't have its own living qualities. And so I would really like to try to step forward and do more pieces and installations that are thought-provoking and not just a sort of still object on a wall or on a cube. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening.